Okay, hey everybody. So I've discovered that Zoom has a whiteboard feature, which is, of course, irresistible for me. So we're going to do a quick lesson on Aquinas and law. I don't think I'm going to be able to draw pictures, but it's going to be worth giving a go. So uh, here we go. And as we kind of talked about last time, this theory of law is really important to Aquinas for a couple of reasons. One is that it's a really good illustration of how he uses Aristotle. So I'm going to want you to know that. And then the other side is it's a really good illustration of how someone like Aquinas using Aristotle can carry forward. And so modern theologians like King use this theory of law in really profound and helpful ways. So it becomes really useful for Christian theology as well. Okay, so we're going to do just kind of an overview of it so you can get a sense of it. And at some point, I'm going to ask you to think about, reflect on both how it's Aristotelian and how it carries forward. All right. So he starts by saying that all laws are based on God's eternal law. These laws were in place with God, right? They're just sort of natural extensions of God's nature. These eternal laws can manifest themselves in two ways. Way number one is what we're going to call divine law. Wow, look how cool that is. And way number two is what we're going to call natural law. Now, these two laws are both equal in weight, right? So one is not superior to the other. And we know that because they both come from the eternal law. And so they reflect the same truth. Divine law is as true as natural law, and natural law is as true as divine law. And that's, again, because they both come from they come from eternal law, all right? Now, these are expressed in different ways, though. Divine law is expressed through the Old Testament and the New Testament. So in the Old Testament, we get the divine laws worked out, and so these become laws that we're supposed to follow. In the Old Testament, it's the law itself, right? The 600 and some rules that Dr. Owens will tell you about at some point. In the New Testament, we often think of this as the law of grace or the law of charity, but it's a way of understanding how we reflect the eternal law that God has passed down to us through special revelation in the form of divine law. It's expressed in all sorts of ways. Okay, natural law is expressed differently. It's expressed as what he calls human laws. Let me write that out. Expressed as human law. And so what the idea here is that every human law, if it's going to be a good law, should be an extension of natural law. All right, does that make sense? So the eternal law gives rise to natural law. What we then do as people is tap into natural law. We discern what natural law is and express that in specific human, in fact, I'm even going to say it that way, express it as specific human laws that are an extension of the natural law. And so as we talked about last time, as we talked about in the video, traffic rules are a good expression of natural law because they work to preserve the natural order that God has embedded in creation. So God revealed that in natural law, and then we express that in human laws. Okay, so that's basically it. Now he will say that, see if I can find a good squiggly. Sometimes there is a correspondence, right? It's not kind of a direct line necessarily. There we go. That between divine law and human laws, if those making the human laws want to cooperate with the divine law, but most human laws are ultimately an expression of natural law, right? So that this correlation is the most important one. Okay, so this is exactly how King uses it in the letter to a Birmingham jail. He makes the same distinction between divine and natural law, and he really doesn't like this as much. In fact, I'm just going to undo that. King isn't as crazy about the correlation between divine law and human laws. What he wants, because he understands that we live in a secular society in which that cooperation is sort of forbidden actually by the Constitution. But that doesn't matter in a way, because the natural law is as true as the divine law. So Christians can follow the divine law if they want, but the natural law, if we do it right, the natural law should give rise to true laws that are as true and are as sort of helpful to human spirituality as the divine laws are. And so then the question becomes, how do we evaluate human laws to make sure that they are divine laws, that they correspond to natural law, which corresponds to the eternal law? And his answer, as you'll see him say in the letter, his answer is that a human law should, let's see what this spotlight does. It should manifest the human experience. In other words, what it should do is tell us that someone is human and preserve their rights as human. Right? Does that make sense? I don't know why I just did that, but hopefully that makes sense. That a human law is a natural law if it sort of uplifts the human spirit, that it recognizes that all humans are human, created in the image of God, and it works in such a way as to preserve that humanity. So the problem with laws that distinguish on the basis of race is that they don't do that, right? That if you make a law that says because you're African American, then you can't vote, right? Or even a law that says we're going to make it more difficult for you to vote, as what just happened in Wisconsin, right? Those laws are not. Those laws do not correspond to natural law because they distinguish on the basis of race, which natural law can't do because that denies the human condition. Okay, so that's kind of our brief overview of this. Hopefully that helps a little bit to make sense. And actually, I think I'll just let you guys figure out how it corresponds to Aquinas. And it should be self-evident, but that'll be a good question for us to pursue going forward. Okay, good job, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.